Welcome to Philanthropy SA. This is a podcast about and for the philanthropic community in San Antonio and South Texas. We introduce organizations and people who are making an impact in the community. Beneficent Financial is proud to sponsor this podcast, and it is our hope that you enjoy this conversation about the impact we can have. The goal is to edify and inspire. Now please join our host, Dan Rebman.
Hi, welcome to Philanthropy SA. I'm your host, Dan Rebman, and very pleased today to be joined by Rhonda Mundhenk. Rhonda is the president and CEO of Haven for Hope, and Haven for Hope has been featured on the podcast before, but Rhonda is new to the role, and I think to San Antonio. You came
Indeed.
To us by way of Austin, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, good. My homework was good. And we want to hear about that, and we want to hear about Haven for Hope. But first, tell us what brought you to San Antonio. What do you miss about Austin? What do you love about San Antonio? We're glad you're here.
These are great questions. First, thank you for having me. Delighted to be here and delighted to be in San Antonio. I came to San Antonio specifically for the job, was recruited for the president and CEO role at Haven for Hope, and was at a crossroads in my career in terms of thinking about things that were important and meaningful for the next several years of my life. And this opportunity came across my desk at a very opportune time. I was able to pursue it and ended up here. So that's the short story about how I ended up in San Antonio. What do I miss about Austin?
Traffic, undoubtedly.
I traded an hour and 45-minute commute for a 15-minute commute, so I cannot say that. No, they're very different cities.
Yeah.
And there's very different things to appreciate about the different cities. What I will say about Austin is, obviously in the time that I've been there, it has grown tremendously. There are obviously huge conferences, huge festivals, huge concert series, those sorts of things. So it has a lot of it earns its name as the music capital. So you have a lot of acts coming through, and you have just something going on every weekend that's interesting. San Antonio, on the other hand, I have found to be one of the friendliest places that I've ever lived, and I've lived all over the world in many, many, many different cultures. And I found that to be absolutely delightful. I found the commutes, at least from where I live, to be 15 minutes to anywhere, also delightful. I did not know about Fiesta. That is a lot of fun.
Yes.
And so, there's a little party in the town. I like that.
There is the Fiesta City. So what is it that got you into doing work that, is primarily designed to help others? The nonprofit sphere, that whole piece. What is it that kind of attracted you to that world?
I mean, I have to credit my parents. My parents were like, you will be useful in the world and you will help people. And so all these years later, that is true. And if you look at, there are 6 siblings in my family. And if you look at sort of siblings across the board, we've all had very different career paths. But the unifying theme is they are about helping people. They are about making the world a better place where you can. And they are about contributing.
Very good. So you're doing this against your will.
That's right.
Because of, punishment as a child.
Overbearing parents.
Exactly.
Yes.
There we go. Well, we're glad that you're doing it, and we're glad you're doing the good work. And as we look at, what's going on with Haven for Hope, I mean, you can kind of take this wherever you want, but maybe a quick 10,000 foot view of Haven for Hope might be in order. Or maybe what is it about the Haven for Hope position that attracted you to, want to say, okay, I'm going to give up all that music?
Yeah. Well, I think every 21st century city is struggling with the issue of homelessness. And it's a compelling sort of urban planning and policy issue. It has roots in housing. It has roots in workforce development. It has roots in whatever kind of composition of industry you have in your city. And it has its roots in the the behavioral health system and how we traditionally dealt with mental health, disability, a number of other issues along those lines. So it's this very complicated knot of policy issues. And one of the unifying themes in my career is that I've always been fascinated by policy issues. And they're always things that I've sort of strived to, in whatever career or industry I've been in, really work on the ones that are material to the industry that I represent from a career perspective. So intractable problems are interesting to me. And the issue of homelessness is really compelling. I think, though, that if you're going to have a solution to that issue, you have to have a city that understands a couple of things. The first thing is, what kind of homelessness are you dealing with? Are you dealing with unsheltered homelessness? Are you dealing with sheltered homelessness? What is the composition of your homeless population? Are people falling into it because of economic vulnerability? If so, how many? Are people falling into it because of untreated behavioral health and substance use conditions? That's another set of issues that needs to be solved. So once you start to understand these are the issues that are going on sort of writ large in a city's homeless population, and you understand the housing policy for some period of time. Are rents rising? Are rents decreasing? Are there vacant houses available? Are there new houses being built? And if so, at what velocity? All of these things tie into sort of the environmental circumstances or milieu that homelessness comes out of and is spawned by. And so the first thing you want to do is understand that. But the second thing you want to do is understand the constellation of services that are arrayed against homelessness. Very important. Some people just focus on the first thing. And as cities sort of bounce around from place to place looking for a model that's going to work, you have to understand your economic circumstances in order to align yourself with a model that may work in your city. But the other thing that's very unique is, again, what is that constellation of services that's arrayed against homelessness or to mitigate homelessness? And what I found about San Antonio was that Haven was really singular in terms of, our founder, Mr. Bill Greehey, 15 years ago, having the prescience to understand that this was going to be a major issue for all cities and beginning to address the problem at that point in time to the tune of $100 million. So I knew that there was sort of this long 15-year history of successfully dealing with the issue pretty effectively and that could be built upon. And so that's, of all the places why choose this place, that was one of the major considerations.
Yeah, and I know the Haven model is unique, or maybe less unique today. I don't know if it's been copied and replicated. And
certainly been replicated.
Which is good. That's, the highest compliment you can get, right?
Indeed.
So what do you think contributes to the efficacy of that model in terms of bringing these services together into a common hub and doing those kinds of things? And what, is it a synergy thing? Is it just the simplicity of the one-stop shop, so to speak? Speak to what it is about the Haven model that seems to be effective.
It's a great question. So I find most truths and most things that work are elegant. And by elegant, I mean simple. So I think the thing that makes Haven work is that you have a 22-acre campus. You have people living on that campus, and you have the services that they need to find their way out of homelessness. And then you have case managers that link individuals to the services that they need in order to find their pathway out. The co-located aspect of services is really, really important. When you are a low-income individual, what you don't have is leisure time to be jumping on a bus or catching a ride or trying to figure out how you're going to get to 6 different social service agencies or health and human services agencies to get your needs met. So that co-location really lowers the opportunity cost for people of engaging in those services. And the last thing I'll say is that if you meet somebody's basic needs, we've all probably encountered Maslow's hierarchy of needs at some point in time. So if you meet people's basic needs, then what Maslow's hierarchy of needs would predict is then you can begin to work on your self-actualization. And that's required to lift yourself out of homelessness.
And, homelessness as an issue, first of all, you mentioned earlier, it's there. It's a big problem. It's, I saw evidence of that on the drive over here, and it was like a 2.5 mile drive, right?
Right.
So we all know that this happens and that type of thing. And a lot of times people attribute different things to it. You mentioned some of them earlier. Is it economic issues? Is it substance? Do you have any idea? And some of those are going to overlap and there'll be multi-factors that come into play. But I mean, are you able to segment the population that way? And kind of what are those run and kind of where seems to be the primary drivers that put people in a position where they find themselves in that condition?
Yeah. So we do have some sense of that. Haven has been around, as I said, for 15 years, which was sort of prescient on the part of our founder. And so we have 15 years of data that we can look back on and sort of say, how does this population subdivide? And that's to the question that you've asked. The answer is this. About 2/3 of folks are really economically vulnerable. Largely, they fall into homelessness because of simple reasons. They run out of money to pay for their housing, or average rents in the area where they're living simply exceed what they can pay. And so they fall into homelessness. So those are really, economic vulnerability can also come from financial shocks, an unexpected hospitalization and a large bill. The truck that you use to get to work every day breaks down. Things of that nature. The person who could take care of your kids is no longer available to do so. So there's all these ways that low-income families can fall into homelessness. And we call that bucket economic vulnerability. So about 2/3 of the folks that we see really sort of fit properly into that economic vulnerability category. The last third, you're really talking about individuals who we would call chronically homeless. And these are typically probably the people who, if the average person closes their eyes and envisions, like when I say homeless person, your mind will conjure an image. And that image is probably this 1/3 of people, so not the majority, but the most visible aspects of homelessness. These people are typically, they suffer from significantly more what are called comorbidities in healthcare. So that's just multiple illnesses. And typically those are going to be mental illness, and often severe mental illness, anxiety, depression, and PTSD. And psychosis are also very high in these populations. And then that is often in conjunction with substance abuse. And so when you look at substance use across the board, what you find is there's this very bidirectional relationship. So substance use can either exacerbate mental illness, or conversely, if you have mental illness, you may be medicating through substances. And so you see this really tight balled cluster of these conditions in people who have been chronically homeless. So these are also people who have been homeless for a much longer period of time. And when somebody is homeless for a longer period of time, your likelihood of suffering trauma from a violent action or something to that effect. I mean, you're living on the streets. You're also subject to long-term exposure issues if you're living on the streets. So those two things, violence and long-term exposure, are the things that can also, again, really set folks off and continue and perpetuate that cycle. So once you have chronic homelessness, the solutions look different than somebody who is economically vulnerable and their problem is just, I need a little more money.
So, and I think you're right if you just say, homelessness, and especially chronic homelessness, the image that comes to mind is of that person who is, very, very, wearing tattered clothes, Absolutely. Obviously hasn't had much hygiene, at least recently, and that type of thing. And that tends to be the image that I think conjures Absolutely. To mind, first and foremost. And so the very fact that you're using the term chronic means that's a difficult population to help. Not that they can't be helped, but that it's a more difficult. The folks that are in that first group that you mentioned earlier, do you have like a success rate or, how do you, is it kind of like, okay, if we can get in front of this now, then we know we can get this taken care of? Kind of what is the good news on that side?
There's great news on that side. So for those 2/3 of folks, so we've done a 15-year study of basically Haven for Hope from inception till now, and all of the individuals that have passed through its gates, just over 52,000. And when you look at those individuals, again, they split into these two groups, and we call them one stayers or multiple stayers. And so the people who have had a single stay, those are individuals, those 2/3 of individuals came to Haven one time, stayed an average of 90 days, left and have not returned to Haven or anywhere else in the continuum of care community that is arrayed to serve homeless individuals. So what that means effectively is that for those individuals, that 90-day stay and the services that they received while they were there was what they needed to exit homelessness. And so that economic vulnerability, the best thing that you can do for that individual or really for those families is have a bed when they fall through the cracks.
Have a place for them to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is probably a good place for us to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
What legacy will you leave? When those who come behind you follow in your footsteps, where will the journey lead? Will it lead to faithful stewardship of time, talent, and treasure? Will they become the beneficiaries of a life that was blessed beyond measure? Our legacy is being created with every decision, and what we invest in reveals our priorities and our convictions. In the end, did we build on reaction or intention? Short-sightedness or long-term vision? Survival and scarcity, or did we build with enough margin to live a life on mission? You see the future and the need to prepare. You have a dream of the life that you want to live and to leave, and we're here to help you get there. To a place where you're truly leading life instead of allowing life to lead you. Where investments are personal, multiplicative, and purposeful. To a place where you live a life of impact long after you've passed the baton, and what you set in motion continues with longevity after you're gone. It is possible that in the pursuit of purpose, we can leave a legacy of philanthropy and a lifestyle of service where you made every act of kindness count and every investment made the world a better place, no matter the amount. This is what success can look like when we team with intentionality to achieve more than we ever thought we could, where our mission meets your life's vision and where you're set up to do well so that you can do good.
Welcome back to Philanthropy SA. I'm your host, Dan Rebman. I'm very pleased to be joined by Rhonda Mundhenk today, President and CEO of Haven for Hope. And if you're hearing me chuckle behind the scenes, it's because that was my third take on coming back. And Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I've ever had 3 takes on anything, but that's okay. There's a first time for everything. So we're having fun today. Rhonda, we were talking about your one-stay people versus your people that, come back periodically because they need services, and the chronic versus kind of temporary thing. And I know you get this question all the time, but, when we see people who are panhandling and people who are, clearly in a bad way, but are, asking for help. And of course, there's that part of you that says, oh man, I want to help. Right. And then there's that part of you that says, oh, but they're probably just going to use the money for a fix or something. And I don't mean like, a quick meal. And it's going to be like, or I may be making the problem somehow worse or enabling or whatever phraseology you want to do. Is that just me trying to rationalize my guilt, or what should we do when we encounter people in those circumstances from your perspective as someone who serves this population? Yeah, well, for one thing, thank you for being a good moral human being. The dilemma that you're wrestling with is a reasonable dilemma. I think when we see suffering, we're compelled to help. And that's a natural human emotion. So there's no shame to the emotion, and there's no shame also with the sort of wrestling about what's going to happen with the money once I give it. I think the material question is, I want to help. And so the question is how, and how sustaining do you want that help to be? Whether that person goes to get water, a sandwich, or gets high, it's all temporary.
in terms of helping their circumstance. And so I think there are two things that you can do in that instance. One, the thing that you do, which is just acknowledge the human being in front of you. Look them in the face. We tend to look away. I tend to see now that I'm in this job and I have opportunity to observe people interacting with folks, the first thing that most people will do is look away. And that's denying somebody's humanity. There's nothing wrong with looking somebody in the face, smiling, saying hello. It will probably mean more than anything that you will give them. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you want to help, again, that question, how long and towards what ends? Again, there are wonderful organizations that are doing work in this population 24/7, 365. Consider when you're moved like that to give to one of those organizations that moves you, whose mission speaks to you. It's more sustainable, and it's sort of the idea that you can give somebody a fish or you can teach somebody to fish. And I would advise the latter.
Very good. So I was actually in a conversation yesterday with and to protect the innocent here, I will say that it was an organization that serves. It's a crisis center, so place where people show up who are in a bad way and need immediate assistance, and that's what they're there to provide. And kind of in this similar type discussion about populations and the folks who hey, are going to stay with us and all that. And the comment was made, sometimes people just want to be warm for a couple of nights and then they're going to go back out on the street, and they do that voluntarily. And that's the way that they, at some level, want to live, or that they're comfortable living that way, or that they've done, and this is by their choice. So, and I know, that's a hard thing, but I mean, this is somebody who's in that space who seemed very sympathetic to, and serves, not exactly parallel organization, but a similar organization, and kind of was like, there are actually people who are like, okay, this is what they decide they want to do this. They know they can stay and they don't. Yeah. What would be your reaction to that, or have you found it to be different, or is it kind of like, well, there's a certain amount of that?
So I think it's complicated. When somebody says, I don't want to stay, I think the intelligent question to ask is why? Why would you not want to stay? And the answer to that question probably has multiple layers of trauma, hypervigilance because they've been on the street for a long period of time, the desperate attempt to keep themselves safe, their bodily integrity, their autonomy, their all of the things that adults want to be and do, I think are all bundled up into that very complex thing. So you can look at it as you're staying or you're going and there's choice there, or you can look at it as sort of the consequence of several layers of milieu. What I would say is, so then is that person a hopeless case? And my short answer would be no. And I will point to our own lives. All of our own lives have these inflection points. And normally, we as people, we as humans, we're not so awesome or cool about change. We don't like it. We don't really move. Most people don't move unless something external is pushing them. And we call those inflection points. And so think about all the times in your life where some external pressure has forced you to go one way or the other. I think what you're looking for in those individuals as well, because they have them too, is inflection points. And all an inflection point is what I'm doing right now isn't what I want to be doing. And I'm willing to take the chance to reach for something else.
To try something different to get a different outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's take a step back and look at kind of broader ecosystem. You're president and CEO of a large nonprofit, entity and that type of thing. What are the things that you and your peers are kind of talking about, going through, looking down the road and saying, oh, here's a challenge that's coming down the road that we better get ready for, or, those types of things? What's kind of the ecosystem look like from your view, and things that, listeners might want to hear about?
Yeah, I think for all nonprofit organizations, it's been a spicy couple of years, right? Or for quite a stint, ever since COVID. So I think COVID had the benefit of relief dollars, but it was certainly upheaval. And organizations have come out of that on the other side without those dollars in sort of a very competitive and challenging environment. And federal funding isn't normally what it is across the board. So when federal funding isn't sort of what it's traditionally been, especially in the way that it flows to and is distributed to the states and then subsequently to nonprofits, when those sort of flows have been disrupted, which they certainly have been in the past couple of years, then it creates leaner times. And so I think all nonprofit organizations are probably dealing with having to do more with less. And that's just the season, I think, where nonprofits are. And it's challenging.
So what types of things have you been doing or has Haven been doing to try to address that or to respond to that environment?
Yeah, so certainly looking towards Haven has a wide swath of programs, and we've typically gone after philanthropy in very specific areas sort of related to basic needs and the like. And there are parallel areas where I think we have a lot of opportunity, to create sector-based outcomes, and therefore to begin to receive those sorts of philanthropy dollars. So we're really looking at things that are synergistic to where Haven is trying to go, things that our clients need. For me, it's never been about chasing the money. It's how do you build a business proposition based on the needs of your clients. Now, some people will say, why do you need philanthropy at all? And the simple answer is our clients are not paying clients. So there's that. If you own a restaurant and the people don't have money who are eating there for the evening, then you have a bit of a problem from a business model perspective. But Haven's done a very successful job of blending funding sources over time. And what we're really looking at now is where else do we have sector impact? Where else have we not asked for money for the work that we do? I'm very fond of saying when people opine that they don't want to pay for homelessness services or homelessness, like, oh, but you do. You pay through your police, through your EMS, through your fire, through Bexar County jail system, through incarcerations, through the legal system. You do, and you pay more than if we addressed it head on.
The upstream, downstream issues continue. And certainly as it relates to, braided income streams, longtime listeners, hi, Mom, will
What is your mom's name?
Beverly.
Beverly, hi. I understand that you will be the main listener of this podcast.
She's my listener. That's
amazing.
She's my one follower. And so actually I'm going to have to check. I'll see that should elicit a reaction. She better text me and say, hey, I heard you called me out on the show. Anyway, we're to the point now where it's kind of like, what did I not ask you that you wanted to talk about? What were you hoping to get to talk to people about today that I didn't think enough or wasn't smart enough to ask you about?
Well, I don't know about smart enough. I appreciate the time. I think, again, this is a critical issue for 21st century cities. And I think if it seems far removed from where you live, it's not. The vast majority of households are a couple of paychecks away from the streets. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, so if you consider that, then the second thing is, should this still be a city for you if you fall and have to climb your way back up? And hopefully the answer to that is yes, you know people who have been in this circumstance, even if they haven't told you. And they're probably much closer to you than you think.
No, the stories that you hear about people who have been in this circumstance, and then, that it is, there is a certain shame about it that people don't like to talk about or don't like to, acknowledge, even though those are probably some of the best stories because they're no longer in that circumstance and they can speak to the fact that it's, not a permanent condition and that people can do things and overcome the circumstances that they're in.
Yeah, if you If you think about it, I was just thinking about why is that? It's kind of the anti-American dream, because the American dream is, you get your education, you get a job, you buy a house, you get it paid off, and you live happily ever after in said house. Now, that's not the way our lives usually go, but that is still the American dream. And so I think that's the reason why people find it difficult to share that they've had experience outside of that.
Yeah.
But they should.
They should indeed. So if you are a person who's lived that and are brave enough to tell your story, we want to hear it. If you are someone who wants to help people in that and avoid this, what is the best way? If someone's listening to this and saying, I want to get involved and help, how should people reach out to you or other organizations? What's the best thing for them to do?
Yeah, so the Haven for Hope website is the best way to get a hold of all of us. There's clear wayfinding there to get to various departments. And obviously, financial contributions, gifts are always appreciated, but there are many, many opportunities to get involved in people's lives and to see the transformation that happens on our campus. And if this is something where you're saying, I'm curious and I don't really understand this issue, and the only people I've seen are at intersections through the window of my car and they seem very otherworldly and strange, then I'd invite you to come down and have an experience at Haven and just experience the humanity of people who are going through this.
On that, we're going to close today, and I hope you take advantage of one of those invitations. On behalf of Philanthropy SA, this is Dan Redman reminding you to do well so you can do good.
Thank you for joining us at Philanthropy SA. We hope you found something to inspire you during today's conversation. If you know organizations and people who are making an impact in the community, we would love to hear about it. Until next time, do well so you can do good.